Thank you, Conn. The rural independents have called for a mini budget and was voted down here by government. Taoiseach, you said a few minutes ago that the Ukraine war was the issue with energy costs into this country, such as fuel. You also said that you have put in €2.6 billion to counteract that. You never said that you took €6 billion in tax on fuel alone in 1 year. €6 billion. In 2020, he took in €2 billion. Now you're taking in €6 billion and you're returning to the people of Ireland 2.6. You're here to protect the people of the here and now. You're here to protect the economy in this country, which also protects the people. You've said that there is 2.5 million people working in this country. There are 2 million vehicles in this country, which 99% of them are ran on fossil fuel, that help run the economy, that help to go to work, that help to feed their families, and your answer is take 49% of the fuel costs coming into this country. That's not protecting the people of this country. Robbery. It's robbing the people of this country. And your own figures are now coming out and showing this by delaying the budget until October. You're taking another €2 billion in taxes on fuel alone. That's just fuel. What about the coal? What about all the other energies that we've got to pay for? What about everything? The clothes on our backs. You're taking taxes like you've never taken before. And in one sweep, which was given to you in a toolbox in November by Europe, you've done nothing. Now on the 6th of April, they've given you that you can reduce it to 5%. And you've done nothing. Why don't you take a leaf out of Malta's books? Their fuel today was $1.21 per litre for diesel and $1.36 for petrol. We are $2.15 in this country, and our government takes 49% tax. Why don't you go back to 2020 and put in the cap like I asked you? Last year I asked you to put a cap on your tax, with which you would have reintroduced 40 cents per litre back into every motorist in this country. And as you said, it's 2 million people in this country have vehicles and 2.5 million are working.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, tax more generally, we use it. When you say you take it, we don't take it. Government is made up of revenue. Our government provides services to the people of Ireland through raising revenue and to expenditure and to spending that revenue. So we need a tax base to fund education, to fund housing, to fund health, to fund childcare services, child protection services, to develop transport infrastructure. We need revenue. Every society, every stable democracy needs a stable revenue base. Now, across the European Union, there's a broad VAT directive that sets out the bands, the various VAT rates that can be deployed, and so forth. And we have to work within that, and we've signed up to that, willingly signed up to that, which does place limits in terms of how far you can reduce, but on the other hand, also does enable us in terms of the rates that we entered into. And so we have reduced VAT and gas and electricity, and also we've reduced excise in measures that we took in terms of 2.4 million. Malta, I understand, is one of the highest levels of borrowing in the EU 27, which would be about 11% of GDP in 2021. We have debt levels as well. The idea that you can just eliminate €6 billion of tax revenue is just not a runner. Simply not. It can't be done anyway, but it's not a runner if you think through, because you looked at this through a one-dimensional lens. But you haven't looked at the other side of it, the allocation. So, for example, 4 billion a year has been allocated to housing now, to build houses, to build social houses, affordable houses, cost rental, and so on. There has to be a revenue base to that. And thankfully, we have a diverse revenue base. But the more important point for us is that in the context of the next budget, that we're in a position to do things that can alleviate the pressure on people, on families, and on children in particular. We've already allocated substantial resources since the last budget to alleviate those pressures across the board. As I said, I've gone through the list in terms of transport costs and so on like that, in terms of a scheme for hauliers, for tillage, and indeed for hospitality also. Okay.
It just goes to show that you have 20 seconds on the clock and you couldn't even fill out what you had to say back, but you managed to use extra time talking back to everyone else. That means you haven't a clue what you're talking about. Now I will tell you that you can waste your minute on. You talked about protecting building. At the moment, we have a building crisis. What is running the building crisis? It's all to do with fossil fuels. Transport costs, all energy into installations, oil-based products. Now we have a building crisis in that people now are no longer building. Check it out. Building is now slowing down. Housing crisis, building slows down. 144,000 being given to developers for apartments. That's what you're given, 144,000. We have people now that are stopping building because we have builders that are saying no longer is it affordable to build houses for their people. That's what they're saying. And you could do it, and you said you put 4 billion into housing. That's 4 billion of the people that we have to make them live here now. And you mentioned Malta. Malta have taken the position to protect their people, even if they've got a higher debt. At least they're protected for the here and now.
Thank you, Deputy.
Who will protect you in the future?
Well, first of all, in terms of housing commencements, about 33,000 from April to April. There are clearly challenges facing housing because of commodity prices going up and inflation generally. And the Ukraine war, and Deputy McGrath raises his eyebrows every time I mention Ukraine. Deputy, the point I'm making, Deputy, to Deputy asked the question, is the Ukraine war does matter, has mattered, and is the driving factor in all of this, and it could get worse in terms of energy. It could get worse because of Russian strategy to now stop the flow of gas to Germany and other major customers that they have. And that will have an impact. Thankfully, we're not as dependent on Russian gas and oil for our energy supplies. But more generally, if there's a contraction in supply more globally, then that will affect everybody at the end of the day in terms of pricing and so on. And I just have to put it to you that in the context of the next budget, it's about expenditure, be about tax, and essentially, and also then a package of measures to alleviate the pressures on people. And parallel with that, we have a public service pay process in place, and every extra percent of that is a substantial portion of expenditure also. So there are very significant issues across the board that have to be met. I think I lost 20 seconds in the first one, apparently I didn't avail of them. But, and we will do that. We will continue the action, and we're going to work on that.
Deputy, relax, please.